Hello there, friends. How are you all doing? I'm taking a break from my busy weekend schedule of generating more AI slop for you because yes, it's on its way. There's something coming. Wait and see. To talk about Rachel Reeves. Yes, in my most recent stream, I was asked if I would cover this, and certainly having looked into it, I think it's definitely worth talking about. Um, Now, Rachel Reeves has been no stranger to a little bit of controversy here and there. You know, if you remember, there was a book that she published a while back, and there was like bits that she'd apparently lifted from elsewhere, a little bit of plagiarism, but of course it was just an accident and unintentional, or whatever kind of defense you want to go for there. And then, there's been stories about the fact that she sort of inflated her CV a bit, and she might have exaggerated some of her qualifications for the job or some of her work history. And that in itself, you sort of go, yeah, a little bit dodgy, but I suppose that maybe everyone wants to sort of brush up their CV to look the best that they possibly can. But now we have a BBC investigation into the bank that she used to work at, and apparently there had been concerns about her expenses when she was in. Oh, I know, expenses and politicians. Some concerns about her expenses there. So I've had a little look at this, but I've saved diving into the bulk of the article to actually read live here with you guys. So the more granular detail of what's on offer, I'll be reacting to at the same time that I'm reading it with you, because I think that's always more fun. So hello there, Lee. Hello there, John. Are you having guests on Swiss? I hadn't been planning to. However, John, if you would like to come on, I can post a link in the bullet chat and you can join me for this. You're more than welcome. Right. Here we are. So we have Rachel. Let me just move around the size of my boxes here. All right then. This is the BBC's article here. The Chancellor and her expenses before she became an MP. Now, in previous streams in previous weeks, I've John, you've said okay. Does that mean you'd like me to send you the link? Do you want me to chuck you over on Twitter? I'll post it in the group chat. Hang on then. I'll throw that in there now before we get started. Because we have in previous weeks, I've been asked, what do you think about Reeves's prospects? Do you think she's going to go? There's been, talks about it in the media a little bit, and so far I don't think so. I think there's seems to be a target on her back, but there doesn't seem to be a lot going on. This, on the other hand, this looks rather juicy, and it looks like one of those stories that probably won't go away and will probably get worse before it gets better. Right, I posted the join link in the chat there, John. So if you would like to come on, you're more than welcome to. Okay, let's have a little look then, guys. Rachel Reeves has had a difficult start to her ministerial career, as well as Labour's new Chancellor taking on the challenges of the UK economy. She has faced tricky questions about her past. They began with scrutiny of her online CV late last year. On the professional networking site LinkedIn, the Chancellor of the Exchequer claimed to have worked for as an economist at the Halifax Bank of Scotland immediately before becoming an MP. One of those who challenged it was a retired former colleague, Kev Gillett. In a public post on LinkedIn, which he asked followers to share, he wrote, "Back in 2009, the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves worked 3 levels below me. Just facts. She was a complaint support manager, LBG stroke HBOS, not an economist. Hashtag fact check." It later emerged that she had worked in a managerial role within the bank's complaint handling department, and her LinkedIn profile was updated to remove the claim. Gillette also made another claim about Reeves' time at the bank from 2006 to 2009, writing that she nearly got sacked due to an expenses scandal where the 3 senior managers were all signing off on each other's expenses. Oh dear. Reeves' team vigorously denies the allegations. So thus far, from what we've read, we've had a person posting on Facebook claiming to have worked with Rachel Reeves, saying no, she wasn't telling the truth about what her role was, and she had some potentially quite grubby dealings with her expenses. So that's the claims of one person. Let's continue on, see if there's anything else to collaborate with this. However, Labour's imminent victory in last summer's general election prompted a post on a private Facebook group for former HBOS employees that BBC News has seen, asking if anyone remembers Reeves. One former employee replied, "The expenses department certainly do." Several others made reference to Reeves being investigated over her expenses spending. BBC News has been seeking the truth behind these suggestions, speaking to more than 20 people, many of whom were former colleagues, gaining access to receipts, emails, and other documents. We have learned that there was an expenses investigation into Reeves and 2 other senior managers. A detailed 6-page whistleblowing document and dozens of pages of attached evidence, which we have seen, raised concerns that the 3 managers were using the bank's money to, quote, fund a lifestyle with allegedly inappropriate spending on dinners, events, taxis, and gifts, including for each other. We have not been able to establish what the final outcome of the investigation was. Indeed, it may not have concluded. All right, then. So where we're at so far is it at the very least, it appeared that there was evidence enough of misuse of expenses here by her and other managers to warrant an investigation. BBC haven't managed to figure out what the end result of that investigation had been. And also, I have John Cooper with me here as well. Hello there, John.
Hello, Swiss. I'm currently outside, so I apologise for any background noises. I will admit, thank you for having me on here.
I've just realised because you haven't appeared in my ears that I've been sitting the whole time with my headset on, and I, in fact, do not have the headset plugged in. So I've been using the crappy microphone on my laptop without even realising. So my apologies.
Okay, well, you see,
Do I sound
you sounded. Hold on, can you say something again?
Yep, say something again.
Not much difference, to be honest, but
okay, well,
I can hear you that might just because I got my own phone earphones in. But anyway, thanks for having me, Swiss. I think it's the first stream I managed to get on the entire year, so finally got a chance to get on the stream.
I think I'm at the moment this year so far. I think I'm averaging about 1 stream with 1 guest every 3 weeks or so. We had one with Tom Williams at the start of the year. I had one with
Elon Musk
on my birthday, and now I've got one here with you on Rachel Reeves. So you're entering the eligibility for another Milky, sir.
Yes, that is partly the reason why I've tried to come on. Besides maybe being one with you discussing Captain America, a movie that comes out, but we have both to see that. We both have to try and see that. So there's that. So anyway, you were talking about Rachel Reeves and apparently the scandal that she's not been a part of the bank as long as she claims, or people saying that she didn't actually do a very good job or something.
Part of this is that she'd lied. Sort of fibbed on a CV about how long she'd been there and the nature of the job she was doing, which I think shows a level of dishonesty that in and of itself isn't critically bad.
Frankly, the public. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, but the much juicier part of this story seems to be that it's alleged that her and other managers at the bank at the time had been misusing expenses.
Okay, well, that makes it even worse because, on one hand, the public might forgive a lie about, okay, I may have exaggerated how long I worked, but it's like you've lied about how long you've worked, and now it seems you've done some money scandal. That's not a good look for the first female chancellor of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue on with this article, and we'll see what else it's got to say about it. But sort of previously, you know, I'd heard about she might have plagiarized some passages in a book that she wrote, and had a sort of I don't know. I don't know if you'd call it a plausibly deniable excuse, but at the very least, as a one-off thing, you kind of go, okay, it might be quite bad. It might have been accidental. I don't know. But then hearing on top of that, and there were these lies, you know, these exaggerations in the CV, and now also going, okay, well, there's these expenses claims as well. It no longer seems to be something that you can just brush away as an individual mark against her, it seems to be developing into something of a pattern of her and her relationship with honesty and the truth, which is not what we want at all.
Yeah, not to mention it's like if this keeps continuing, who knows how many more scandals there may come out. That's because
Well,
I have seen. Sorry, go on.
oh yeah, no, I was going to say I agree with you. I think that probably now this is like one of those situations where the sharks smell water, smell blood in the water. There's probably a thirst to try and dig into more things to do with Rachel Reeves now that she's already got some rather dodgy things against her.
Yeah, and as we know, see, the more scandals pile and build up, the more likely that you're not going to last long, as we saw with Boris Johnson.
Yeah,
Granted, that was Prime Minister.
Yes, I'll tell you what then. We'll get into speculation about Reeves' position once we've got through the article here. I'll read a couple of comments real quick and then I'll carry on with the article. So,
Okay,
Lee
yeah,
Hallam,
I'll just mute myself.
yeah, no worries. Lee Hallam says the CV claimed she left 6 months after she left. Yes, that was one of the bits I had seen already. And on a settlement agreement that she took legal advice over. Okay, that bit I hadn't seen. Again, not looking good. Cameron Hickman says Labour are guilty of almost every criticism that they have made about the Tories since Keith became leader. Yeah. Pains me to say it, Cam. But in the time that Labour's been in, there have been such a variety of different scandals, major or minor, that I've started having to think to myself, Christ, they really don't seem that much better when it comes to matters of integrity, do they? So I'll continue on with this article here. So the initial part of the investigation, which was conducted by internal audit at the request of the bank's risk department, found that the 3 managers appeared to have broken the rules and the whistleblower's allegations were substantiated, according to a senior source with knowledge of the investigation. A spokesman for Reeves said the Chancellor had no knowledge of the investigation, always complied with expenses rules, and left the bank on good terms. Well, somebody here doesn't seem to be telling the truth. Banking career. Reeves was in her 20s and trying to become an MP when she took up a job at Halifax Bank of Scotland in West Yorkshire in 2006. The role required her to move north from London, where she had unsuccessfully stood as Labour's parliamentary candidate in what had been a safe Conservative seat. She initially worked in the mortgage department, but in late 2007 moved to become head of business planning in the customer relations department, which handled complaints. And this I think is what she had referenced as her role being an economist. And then we go, okay, no, it was the HR department. We see. Her career at HBOS coincided with what would prove to be a tumultuous time for the bank. The global financial crisis, which began in late summer of 2007, would force the sector to embark on a massive program of job cuts and cost savings. In September 2008, HBOS itself came close to collapse, requiring a government-brokered takeover by Lloyds and an emergency bailout, which would total 20.5 billion of taxpayers' money. It was shortly after this near collapse by early 2009 that a whistleblower from her department raised concerns about the spending habits of Reeves and 2 other managers, one of whom was Reeves's boss. Before this, in late 2008, a memo was circulated to Reeves and others which called for tighter cost control in the department. Written by a planning and strategy manager, the document Financial Risk Control Within Customer Relations, what an exciting name, raised concerns about spending on travel and corporate spending cards, including motivation cards, which I've never heard that phrase before, a motivation card, which were used to reward staff. It laid out proposals to improve cost controls, which included monthly discussions with Reeves and another of the senior managers who the whistleblower claimed had misused expenses to give visibility of claims, invoices, thanks cards, and reports. Separately, Reeves was emailed in mid-December 2008 about proposals for a presentation setting out how much had been spent on motivation cards, recognizing top performers on taxi travel to focus attention on particular aspects of travel that are costly and perhaps need more consideration. Reeves replied to say that she was not sure a huge analysis was needed and she wanted to see the papers before they went any further.
Right, I'll take a few comments here quickly. We've only got one more since before. Lee Hallam says the old tradition is that the Tories have sex scandals while Labour have financial scandals, so keeping up traditional values. Yeah, I mean, thus far, Labour haven't had any sex scandals from what I've been aware, have they?
Well, if I recall, no, I mean, normally if I recall, see, John Major's government had a lot of major sex scandals, and then Boris Johnson's had.
Sorry. I don't know if you realise what you said there, but you said John Major's government had a lot of major sex scandals, and maybe like major as in John Major. Well, I mean, they did have a John Major sex scandal in the end because he'd been was it Edwina Curry or someone in the cabinet?
Something. I think something about an assistant or something. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I recall there were sex scandals in John Major's government, and then afterwards, let's see, granted, there's not the reason why his government collapsed, of course, and many blame that with Black Wednesday, but it's stuff that didn't help. And then, of course, you got Johnson, who had numerous those scandals coming out. In fact, that was ultimately Chris Pincher was the one that ultimately toppled him in the end. So you have that. And when Labour was in charge, it was mostly because it's the financial situations when, particularly the 2008 global economic crash, and then like all these scandals of that came out. So it's it's sort of history repeating itself in a sense.
I mean, round about that time, you had the MP's expenses scandal, which Labour was obviously in power for. I think it was a plague on everyone's houses. I don't think it was just the Labour MPs that have been fiddling it, but that was certainly.
But since they were in the government at the time, they were the ones that were mostly blamed for it.
Oh yes, for sure. And given that they'd been in power for quite some time at that point already, and had obviously had their reputation weakened by the Iraq War, their majority diminished by 2005, and then the financial crisis as well. It's they ended up
arguably, and arguably you also have a rising of a third party, though granted reform is very different from the Dems, of course. So there are some differences. So, but yeah,
I'll crack on with the article here just to see where were we up to? The whistleblowers' complaints submitted by early 2009 was a 6-page document. Allegations of the spending culture. Have I read some of this already, or does it just look familiar? The report. Reeves was accused of spending hundreds of pounds on handbags, perfumes, earrings, and wine for colleagues, including one gift for her boss. Concern was also expressed about her spending on taxis on a Christmas party. The whistleblower believed the spending to be excessive. Okay, now some of this I'm trying to work out whether it's fiddling, genuine fiddling, where you're buying things that you shouldn't be spending, or whether some of this, when it's saying buying stuff for colleagues, whether as part of a department they sort of have in incentives for kind of saying, oh, we want you to work hard, we want to be a nice little family here at the department in the bank, so we're going to get you nice little treats or blah blah blah. I mean, on a much lower scale, my job, for example, from time to time they'll give the staff little goodie bags, either around Christmas or other little events, and it'll have little nice little freebies in it, but in fairness, what we get, the total value of what we get probably adds up to about a tenner. So if it's hundreds of pounds being spent on luxury items, I mean, I suppose the banks have more money sloshing around, but yeah, it starts to look a bit stranger. But then again, of course, I'm trying to come up with sort of like a devil's advocate, reasonable sort of thing for this. But
I guess it depends. If it's like if it's like more expensive than what you would expect, like say maybe something like it seemed like a chocolate that would be maybe a middle class person could afford, or at least a luxury person could afford £30 or something, that kind of fancy chocolate.
This ain't no Cadbury's, this is Thornton's, baby. Thornton's department.
I mean, if it's something like that, but if it's something that's thousands of pounds that could be used for maybe taxpayers' money for something more good, and that's being spent, I think there'll be a bit more of an outrage.
Yeah. Lee Hallam here says, I think the suggestion is that the colleagues that the colleagues were the three managers were buying things for one another rather than for junior staff. Yeah. I mean, earlier on in the article, I had seen where it said that managers had been sort of signing off on each other's expenses, which seemed like a little bit of a cabal that they had going on. But on what was the other bit here? It's something about it said here motivation cards were used to reward staff. That just planted the idea in my head that maybe there was a culture there of them, buying things for the staff below them in their department as well. That said, I don't expect that the BBC would be going after this particular story if they didn't think it had some legs on it, rather than something fairly innocuous that could just look dodgy. But I'm trying to be somewhat even-handed. I wasn't really convinced by my own devil's advocacy there, but I thought it was worth saying in the interest of balance.
You would think that, well, like you said, it seems to be something that could lead to, arguably, we probably need more information, but it seems that BBC has enough lead to think that, oh, this is something extremely scandalous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think that the BBC would go out on a limb if they didn't think that there was something to this. Reeves and one another were claiming, and their boss was signing them off, including gifts for herself, says Lee Hallam. All right, let's push on with the article here, see what else it's got to say. After a call to the whistleblowing hotline, the whistleblower was instructed to hand in a physical copy of their report with supporting evidence, two sources said. A separate source who contacted BBC News themselves in the wake of an article on the furore around Reeves's CV last year was also aware that someone had blown the whistle on Reeves and another colleague. The report was passed to the bank's risk department and at their request was taken on by the internal audit department. A source who worked in risk in the bank told us, given the nature of the allegations claiming expenses for things you wouldn't normally claim expenses for, and the relative seniority of the individuals, the matter was referred for investigation by a team outside of that department. Well, there we are then. If we're saying things that you wouldn't normally claim expenses for, then that certainly does suggest that some of these things were outside of what was seemed to be normalized and permissible within the department. The internal audit department, which had access to expenses, claims, and sign-offs, then assessed the complaint and supporting documents according to two sources. It found there was evidence of apparent wrongdoing by three senior managers, including Reeves, a senior source with direct knowledge of the investigation, told the BBC. The internal audit completed its involvement in the investigation and passed its findings on to an investigative part of the risk department in around April 2009. The normal process would have been for the managers to be interviewed about the allegations. Then there would have been an assessment of potential disciplinary action if necessary. However, it does not appear that this next interview stage took place or that the investigation ever reached a formal conclusion. Reeves insisted she was never interviewed, as did her boss, who said she was not aware of the expenses probe and my department was not related to any alleged investigation. The other senior manager declined to comment. So obviously here we have two potential scenarios, John. We have that she genuinely was not aware of it, or that she was aware of it, and she's just lying about the fact she was aware of it, hoping that it can't be indisputably proved that she was aware of it.
Well, it's a no-win situation either way, because on the one hand, if she wasn't aware of it, it shows a lack of insight from her perspective, that she was not clever enough to figure out what was going on. Or if she is involved with it, it means that, well, she's down and dirty, if you will. It's like she's done the crime.
Sorry, I cut out just a little bit while you were talking there, but I think I caught the tail end of it.
Yeah. It's the incompetent that she didn't know, or she did know and she's corrupt, basically.
Indeed.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that regardless of the fact that this investigation didn't seem to have a formal conclusion to it, the idea that there were whistleblowers involved, that there were sort of internal memos sent to the department saying that there may be misspending or it needs to be tightened up, and the fact that it was deemed there was enough evidence worthy an investigation, and although perhaps you didn't have a conclusion to that investigation clearing Reeves. Like, sorry, what am I saying? Although you didn't have a conclusion to that investigation definitively saying that Reeves had done wrongdoing, likewise, you didn't have anything clearing her either. Let me push on a tiny bit.
No problem. I'm just heading into a shop to collect my bike, and then afterwards I'll be a bit more free to chat.
No problemo. There was no evidence that we are aware of the bank's internal investigation was completed or that they ever concluded finding of any wrongdoing. Reeves left the bank in May 2009, as did her boss. Oh, okay. They both left at the same time. What a funny coinkydink. I wonder why they both left at the same time. The other senior manager was on sick leave in May and never returned to work at the bank. All three of them left at the same time. Isn't that peculiar?
Yeah, that does not Ritzy go in her favor of like she being ignorant.
Yeah. Okay. The pieces are all falling together now. In the chat here as well, Lee Hallam adds a settlement agreement can be for all sorts of things, including wrongdoing. That is a bit too grey for a disciplinary. She may be relying on a non-disclosure agreement that would stop a statement from HBOS. They are pretty common in settlements. Okay, so that's why that she can offer a denial of this and hope that nothing further ends up coming of it. He said it was... sorry, where was I up to here? There is no suggestion any of the departures were linked to the investigation or spending issues, and a spokesman for Reeves said the chancellor left the bank on good terms. BBC says no suggestion, but it's them all leaving at the same time. I guess you could call it circumstantial evidence from an outside perspective, but certainly it points to a certain conclusion that it's interesting that they all left at the same time after being investigated. He said it was they also provided a statement from the lawyer who provided legal advice on the compromise agreement. A voluntary legal document ending an employee's employment that she signed on her departure. He said it was a standard style agreement adopted by the company when a mutually agreed exit was made during the bank's restructure. Absolutely no allegations of wrongdoing or misconduct were mentioned by the HBOS HR team during this process, he said. What lay behind the whistleblower's complaints and the grumbles of other colleagues was unhappiness relating to several different areas of spending. One concern was the use of bank payment cards to pay for Christmas and birthday gifts. A culture developed amongst senior managers in customer relations where gifts were given freely to direct reports, both upwards and downwards. One former colleague had claimed they had a very cavalier attitude regarding the budget in their department. Reeves and other senior managers had both a corporate credit card and another payment card known as a motivational thanks card. The motivation card was intended to be used to reward high performers for their good work. I wish they'd explained that earlier when I first came across the phrase motivation card. Like they just threw it in there like, oh yeah, everyone, don't you all have motivation cards at your job? There was guidance about its use in February 2008. A memo instructed HBOS employees on the correct use of motivation cards, which were widely used within the customer relations department. It stated that the cards were used to reward and acknowledge colleagues who have gone the extra mile. Suggested gifts included chocolate, flowers, wine vouchers, or you could simply log on and send a free e-card to say, thanks for a job well done. The memo said. It warned that managers would be responsible for all transactions on your card and would be held accountable if spending on your statement cannot be verified. Spending in this area was scrutinized because the company incurred tax on it. Okay, and then there's a line of text here that says, reward or acknowledge colleagues who have gone the extra mile. Your card has been credited with an amount of £25 for each person who reports directly to you. The memo doesn't explicitly prohibit Christmas and birthday gifts, but 11 former employees told us that they had never heard of colleagues being bought birthday gifts with the bank's money and believed that doing so was in the breach of rules. Several said any birthday gifts were bought with their own money. And tying this back to my own experience of gift giving within the world of work in my job, as much as I said, yes, occasionally we get little goodie bags from the company we work for. We do not get birthday gifts bought for us on the company money.
Oh,
if there's any birthday gift buying at work where I work, it's usually that us colleagues make a group chat with one another and all chip in, like, I don't know, a $5 or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's sort of similar to mine. By the way, my audio is back, so sorry for that inconvenience. I'm not sure if you heard saw my message, but yeah, my colleague in my workplace, let's see, we all get selected someone that we buy a birthday gift for, like from the entire group of like the workplace. Someone buys it with their own money, arguably with a certain amount of limit, and then let's see, we give that gift on their birthday or the day they're in before, or let's see, before their birthday, if they have taken the day off for their birthday. So it's sort of like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For example, let's see, normally people would buy me some sort of like comic book superhero stuff. Let's see, because I know I like that kind of thing. But
they're not buying you bottles of wine or
no, but no, they're not using the workplace's own financial things to do it. They're doing it with their own money. Let's see, so it's like, but no, it's like and it seems like and but it seems like they're using the actual bank's money to do this when they're not supposed to, which let's see, so they're breaching pretty much their bank's rules on this. So it doesn't look good.
No, it certainly does not. I'll read another comment here from Lee, who says it's a dodgy culture that makes discipline very difficult. So it is very credible that the worst offenders would go with a settlement. I don't buy the restructure idea. Redundancy is the process there. No, that sounds like quite a reasonable interpretation there. Now I've just skimmed the rest of this article. It's quite long, so I'm just going to have a look to see what else there is that's worth mentioning here. However, one ex-staff member, Jane Waper, former HR business partner, who was given permission to speak to us by Reeves's team. It's so nice of Reeves's team to put someone forwards to talk to the BBC. Claimed that birthday gifts and Christmas presents could be purchased during motivation cards. Staff were encouraged to do so for their teams. Reeves bought birthday presents for colleagues with HBoss's money through her time in customer relations. Receipts show with purchases including wine and cosmetics. Some were bought using a motivation card, while others were reimbursed through an expenses claim. She also spent £152 on a handbag and perfume as a present for her boss using the bank's money. 152 quid for a handbag. Is that expensive for a handbag? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, I think most handbags would be like 20, 30 or 40 pounds normally.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, 150 quid for anything using the bank's money for someone.
Yeah, I mean, normally that's stuff you expect a game console to be, or, well, it's now a couple of hundred now, but still.
Yeah.
But it's like...
Her PA said she had received Christmas and birthday gifts from Reeves and assumed they were personal gifts and they'd come out of her own pocket. Reeves also used a motivation card to spend more than £400 on a leaving meal for a colleague, which the whistleblowing complaint claimed was not a permitted use. The situation around Christmas gifts was more complicated. That's because, according to internal bank guidance, we have seen these could be bought on expenses, providing they were small gifts of £25 or less, and they were not bought using the motivation card. The £25 limit was based on tax advice, as anything more substantial would attract tax. It appeared to her colleagues that Reeves had broken these rules, but there does appear to have been confusion about the policy. We also have seen emails showing Reeves was encouraged by her boss to buy more expensive Christmas presents and to pay for them with her motivation card. In late 2008, Reeves' manager wrote that after checking with other departments, it looks like the standard practice of buying Christmas gifts for direct reports using Motivation Bank will continue this year. She suggested spending of £50 to £75 per person. A reminder titled Further Clarity about how to buy Christmas gifts and how much to spend was circulated by another HBoss employee in early December. Reeves and other managers who were later investigated were all among the receipts of emails confirming the rules on Christmas gifts. While seasonal gifts such as Christmas were allowed, the managers were explicitly told they could not use motivation cards for these purchases. The cost of these trivial gifts was not allowed to exceed £25. This is because rewards for performance at work are taxable, whereas seasonal gifts such as those for Christmas, providing they are not too costly, are exempt. Reeves wrote that she didn't understand why the goalposts are shifting. and said that she had already ordered and paid for her presents using the motivation bank stroke thanks. Do not intend to cancel them, claiming it would cost more time and money. A colleague responsible for finance acknowledged that the message on paying for Christmas gifts hadn't always been clear, but I don't believe that the goalposts were being moved. Receipts showed that gifts bought by Reeves at Christmas 2008 included a £49 handbag for her PA, while she received £55 worth of wine from her boss. There was a widespread belief at the bank that there had been an expenses investigation into Reeves and two colleagues, but Reeves said that she had no recollection of being investigated. Ah, yes, no recollection. That old chestnut. I don't remember. There's no recollection. No recollection of being investigated.
The oldest excuse in the book.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. I don't recall. My memory's patchy. Very patchy.
Yeah, it's like the dog ate my homework excuse, pretty much.
She was not aware of an investigation, nor was she interviewed, and she did not face any disciplinary action or any other matters. All expenses were submitted and signed off on the proper way, says a spokesman for Reeves. Again, you know, the fact that her and these two managers that were being investigated all left the bank at the same time seems like far too much of a coincidence for them not to have been investigated, and obviously on their way out not to be aware of the investigation. The implication being that them leaving is to do with the investigation.
Yeah, and this is like something that happened like a decade or so ago, more or less. I mean, it's not like 3 decades ago. That would be a much better excuse, but it's like, no, it's like a decade ago with like the biggest financial crash that, let's see, Britain has faced since a century, I believe, since the Great Depression, I believe. So it's like, that's not looking in their favor.
I'm just going to see if there's any more to this here. Oh, hang on. A few more from Lee here. Buying a present for your boss with company money. Never heard of such a crooked thing. Mr. Back here says it is common when a company restructures its leadership to offer a payment for those who volunteer to depart greater than they would get if made redundant. Saves paperwork. A Downing Street spokesman said the Prime Minister had no concerns about Reeves's conduct. Asked whether Keir Starmer still thought the Chancellor had integrity after she updated her career history on LinkedIn, his official spokesman said yes. The Chancellor and then Prime Minister are working hand in hand to deliver on their priorities, blah, 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 change the country, blah, blah, blah. Number 10 added that the Chancellor had gone through the declaration process all members of the Cabinet go through when asked if she disclosed if there had been investigation into expenses before she was an MP. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said the investigation raised questions for the Chancellor. She posted on X, Keir Starmer said, restoring trust in politics is the great test of our era. Until she, meaning Reeves, comes clean, it's not just about her CV, but about the circumstances in which she left HBOS. No one will take him seriously. The investigation at HBOS was not the last time Reeves would face scrutiny over her expenses. In 2015, it emerged that she was among 19 MPs who had had their official credit cards suspended by the Parliamentary Expenses Watchdog after failing to show that their spending was valid. Reeves owed more than $4,000 in spending at the time her card was blocked. She subsequently cleared her debt. All right, then. So that that is the crux there of the BBC's investigation into those matters. So you had denial from Reeves of any wrongdoing or any awareness of allegations of wrongdoing. Keir Starmer has stood behind her, but certainly there's enough within there to raise questions and concerns, and to say it doesn't seem like you can dismiss everything you've heard with purely innocent or innocuous explanations there, does it?
I mean, at this point, I think Labour's hopes are maybe possibly getting their trust in the economy again with Rachel Reeves might be shattered after this. So,
yeah, I mean, you know, Rachel Reeves hadn't been in the best of positions prior to all of this, but it. Go on.
Sorry, that was someone in the background. I'm just outside now. I've got my bike.
No worries. Yeah, I think that given now that Reeves has had a number of stories about her where she's been shown to be dishonest about things, whether it's the CV or plagiarizing parts of her book, or now her history with expenses within the company she used to work for, or indeed just adding to that what happened in 2015 with the MP's expenses as well. All of these things taken in isolation, maybe you could maybe maybe you can explain that away, blah blah blah. But the fact that there does seem to be a pattern here, that there seems to be a trend of behavior of dishonesty and trying to take advantage of basically milking your workplace for goodies.
This is always the biggest problem for Labour, because the economy is always the thing that they've struggled to persuade the public with. Because see, whether we like it or not, the Tories have always been considered better on the economy, even though I think they have shown that they are not, especially with the last government. But as a result, they probably lost. Trust. They're probably recovering on the issue of the economy again. At least, or maybe they might get some credibility if they get rid of Rachel Reeves. But from the sounds of it, Keir Starmer doesn't really want to get rid of her, either because he can't get rid of her, or there's no one else to replace her, if you will.
I mean that is very much the view that I had a few weeks ago, when there was sort of stories in the news about, oh, maybe Rachel Reeves is going to end up having to go and blah blah blah. That's kind of what I said. I thought I don't see Starmer being motivated to get rid of her. I think that to get rid of your chancellor at the moment would probably be more of a net negative than a net positive. And what would the change in direction really be with a different chancellor? I think, though, John, I am updating that view now, because as far as this Reeves stuff goes now, it seems that the character of the chancellor we have of the country appears to be someone who has exaggerated their qualifications for the job, someone that seems to have been shown to have been dishonest on different occasions, and indeed obviously has come in for criticism with measures of the budget that she proposed only recently also. All of those things taken together does not paint a good picture for, is this the right person to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer? One other thing I'll say as well, John, okay? Labour are in a pinch at the moment because of the fiscal rules that they set out for themselves. Obviously, as you remember, during the time of the general election, there were all kinds of different taxes that they said that they weren't going to be raising. And indeed, in a way, they sort of painted themselves into a bit of a corner by saying that there are all these different taxes they weren't going to raise. Then the budget comes along and they have to go for things like employers' national insurance, for example, which was one of the few ones that they hadn't said that they were going to raise, but probably a more conventional tax rises might have made more sense. But with things as they're looking at the moment, the way that the finances are looking, that either you're going to have to borrow more or spend less or tax more, because the situation as it is now, it's going to have to be one of those three that you end up doing. And I'm getting a bit of background noise from you.
Yeah,
that's all right. Yeah, if you just don't mind muting yourself when you're not chatting, that's super. But I think that given that situation, but also I think what's occurred to me only in the last few days, kind of with everything that's going on right now with, Donald Trump, Ukraine, European defense spending, trying to look for what's going to happen to Ukraine after the war and all the rest of it. There's a very strong case to be made that we, the UK, and other European countries do need to really pump up our defense spending from where it is. We are leading. I would say that we're leading Europe as far as defense spending goes. I think it's only like Poland and some of the Baltic states that are spending a higher proportion of their GDP on defense than we are. But I think us as NATO countries that are supposed to be over 2%, I think we're still doing better than a fair amount of them. But regardless, if you're going to have to face that reality and say, okay, you are going to have a significant rise in defense spending, the most straightforward, logical way to do that, I think, would be to raise taxes in order to fund that higher defense spending. So what's starting to come into view to me, John, is a scenario maybe where eventually it appears to Starmer and Labour that it is untenable to keep Reeves in place because the stories about her don't go away, and maybe there are more revelations about her expenses with the bank or other related stories to do with mismanagement of money or dishonesty. So the pressure continues to build on them. On top of that, it might allow them a sort of a slightly clearer break with what their current policies have been on taxation and spending as well. If they say, okay, sort of kind of a clean slate now, Reeves has got to go. The previous agenda had been with what Reeves was doing. Now we've got to bring in a new person who wasn't, it wasn't the same as Rachel Reeves, the would-be chancellor on the campaign trail for the election, saying, I will raise taxes on this, I won't raise taxes on that. You get a slightly cleaner slate with a new person in, and they're able to use justification along the lines of, well, look, you know, the situation with the United States and Europe and defense is not what we'd anticipated prior to the election. It's a different situation now. We're going to have to raise taxes in order to up our defense spending, and maybe while you're at it, you know, raise those taxes to fund a few of the other things you want to do while you're at it as well. And that might end up being the situation we end up in. That's what feels like it could come into view for me, that ultimately Reeves does end up going because it's just not tenable to keep her. And then once she's gone, they announce a slight change in their policies and probably end up raising some taxes. And maybe as well, they use that as an opportunity to, I don't know, do a U-turn on their inheritance tax on farmers, because that's been a thing that's just rolled on ever since the budget, and you've had sort of big protests about that, and a lot of the opposition parties lining up in support of the farmers as well. So that's proving quite unpopular. So maybe they might take that as an opportunity to kind of go, that was a Reeves policy. We've got a new chancellor now. The new chancellor is going to raise taxes, but they're going to not do inheritance tax on the farmer. That's what I'm seeing possibly could be what happens in the next month or two. What do you think?
Yeah, I can see it. By the way, apologies for any background noise because I'm currently in Sainsbury's. I figured I'd take the chance while I'm out. But yeah, I can definitely see Labour using Rachel Reeves as a scapegoat for the things that have gone wrong in their first couple of months into government, now nearly a year, I will admit. And let's see, and also use the fact that because basically when they were getting in power, I think they fully expected Biden to either have his second term or Harris to take over, and it worked in that way. But let's see, they completely underestimated how the American public, let's see, responded to Biden, and then then elected Trump. And of course, since Trump is a wild card, let's see. Well, granted, people have been predicting some of the worst fears people have been predicting about Trump seemingly are starting to take effect. So, and it's not looking good for what Labour wants to do. To hope that would happen under Starmer. So now they have to try and adapt. So they can arguably use the current situation to let's see Rachel Reeves as the scapegoat and saying all the problems were with her. We're getting a new chancellor to take over and do all the stuff that we couldn't do before, and saying that now that we have this also new situation, we going to change what we initially planned to do while on canvassing. Now, some will buy it, some will probably not, I think, but let's see. Granted, I don't think Labour's going to recover their popularity anytime soon unless they do get some results in.
Yeah, and I think I think you're right, by the way, when you say that some will buy it and some won't, because obviously, as much as they can use getting rid of Reeves as a good opportunity to change direction on a few of their spending policies, at the same time, Starmer was totally sort of like arm in lockstep with Reeves for the whole time they've been in government so far. It's not even as if I'd really heard an awful lot about, oh, there's divisions between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and behind closed doors they're falling out over these things or any of that. From everything that I've heard, Starmer's been pretty much on board with everything that Reeves had done anyway. So it's not that he can escape criticism for some of these things, but yeah, from a sort of from a political optics perspective, it's easier for them to make a break with things such as again, this is speculation. I don't know if they're going to do it. I think that Labour would be very politically savvy to use getting rid of Reeves as an opportunity to do a U-turn on the farmers' inheritance tax issue, and to say it's time for us to raise taxation in other areas to spend some of these other things. I think that would be the best thing for them to do in their current position. Whether or not they end up doing that, I don't know. But that's what I think would probably be the savvy move here. I'll tell you how I describe it at the moment, right? Okay, if I'm thinking how in danger is Reeves at the moment, I think that there's this story is probably the shift in the political gravity. Do you know those old I think it's like Warner Brothers cartoons, like like the Roadrunner,
Looney Tunes?
Looney Tunes, yeah, that's it. You know where like one of the cartoons is like coyotes chasing the Roadrunner over the edge of a canyon, and then the coyote crosses the edge of the canyon, and for a few moments he carries on running in midair and doesn't realize that the ground has disappeared beneath his feet, and then finally he looks and holds up that little Yelp sign and then plummets down to the ground. I think that Rachel Reeves' chancellorship has just hit that moment where she no longer has the ground beneath her feet anymore. It may not be clear to her or Starmer just yet that she's going to end up having to go, but I feel like the most likely thing is that the stories about Reeves are not going to go away, and probably she is going to have to go at some point. That's my new updated view. I know I basically said the exact opposite only a few weeks ago when it came to Reeves, but I feel that this might just be that straw that broke the camel's back, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, if between Starmer and Reeves going, Reeves is the more likely one to go, because it's like, Labour can't really get rid of their Prime Minister who's been in less than a year and just the beginning of their new term of government. That does not look good, no matter how you spin it.
No. I mean, it's a bad look for them to be swapping out their chancellor so early on as well. Don't get me wrong, but you're right. Obviously, shuffling the people beneath you. And I assume that Labour MPs would give the Starmer the time of day of that for least and say, okay, he's got to change out the chancellor because it's just not viable.
At best, if they were going to boot him out, it'll probably be in like his second or third year, really. If I think if they're going to do it, or maybe just the end of his term and just like get a new guy in just quickly before the next election. That's probably the best bet you've got. But
I'd say that my view on Starmer's position hasn't shifted at all. I think that Starmer is still just about as secure in his position as Prime Minister and leader of the party as he has been at any other point. But I do think it's Reeves now that's in serious trouble.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Let's see. This is also no problem because I think Rachel Reeves, arguably, is one of the three people that people are also considering to succeed Starmer if he was to go by, and let's see, before the next election or during the next election, because as far as I can tell, the three candidates you hear people talking about being leader after Starmer were Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, and her. And from what I could tell, at least in terms of seat-wise, she might be the safest because, well, we learned from the last election, Wes Streeting was like nearly lost his seat by 500 votes and could very well lose it to an independent next time if the independent vote remains strong and people are just so mad at him, they vote for that guy, let's see, or whoever independent candidate stands next time. And Angela Rayner, there's been polling that she might lose her seat to Reform. Let's see, going on. So there's also a worry about that. But if Reeves, so in some sense, Reeves seems like the safest in terms of seat options. But if she's got all these scandals, no one wants to see leader-filled scandal.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, Christ, the way Labour are looking in the polls at the moment and the rise of Reform, I don't think anyone's as safe in their seats as they might like to be. But yeah, I agree with that idea of who the main likely contenders to eventually replace Starmer would be, and definitely with Reeves out of the picture, Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner do seem like the ones that would go to eventually. Lee adds a point in the chat here and says that Trump is helping her at the moment, keeping her out of the headlines. Yes, I agree with that. If it wasn't for, you know, everything going on with Donald Trump in Europe at the moment, then I would imagine filling that void would absolutely be this Rachel Reeves story right now. So she's been quite lucky right now that it's not been sort of like the biggest story in the UK at the moment. But it's not going to go away either. It won't go away. Like I say, I think people smell blood. People smell blood, and I think this is going to now keep rolling on until Starmer finally has to accept that it's just not a position that he can defend keeping her in.
At the very least, it's
sorry, just quickly as well. Especially if there are further revelations too. If there's more stuff that comes out about this story, or if there's evidence that comes out to suggest that Reeves has clearly lied about being aware of the investigation or anything like that, then that's this done. You know, she's cooked.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely going to get a lot more attention closer to locals because news will be paying somewhat of attention to the local elections. And if you have like, let's see, these scandals going on, why that happened, it's going to have some sort of impact on it.
Oh Christ, yeah. Labour just can't catch a break at the moment. Like earlier in this week, right? I was seeing like announcements they were doing about like their house building. The fact that because this was one of the things in their manifesto I was quite jazzed about, that they wanted to build some new towns and stuff. Some of it would be extensions of existing towns, but some of it would actually be new settlements built, you know, in entirely new areas, brand new Milton Keynes type things, or whatever. And that was stuff that I was quite excited by. I think they've been talking about small nuclear reactors or something like that as well. But the point being that this had been a week where I'd actually and of course I mean, as far as the immigration stuff goes, you know, as I said, I didn't much like the deportation videos they were doing, but the larger picture still suggested to me that they were starting to take the issue more seriously as a thing that they need to be seen to be doing something on. So all of that together, I'd felt that actually this had been a better week for Labour in terms of trying to push forwards the fact that they're doing some stuff in government. And yet again, what's the distraction? Stupid scandals, or in this case, Rachel Reeves. Yeah. So in the run up to the locals, man, you know, Reform still have momentum at the moment. They clearly still have momentum right now. Kemi Badenoch. Just did you see Kemi Badenoch at PMQs this week, John?
No, but I've heard about it where she tried to do something about Palestine family, but Starmer gave an own goal by pointing out it was her government that allowed what would allow them to enter in and all that stuff. Granted, I'm not happy about how the Palestinians are being treated, but but basically the point is she's been shooting herself in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the exchange between her and Starmer at the PMQs this week. Now, I'll preface this by saying, you know, Starmer's not spotless for criticism. He still did plenty of not answering the question, as usually prime ministers do. But it was an amazing exchange that there were these questions that Kemi Badenoch was asking Starmer. Starmer was, by and large, addressing the nature of the question or whatever. But then Kemi Badenoch was continuing on with her follow-up questions, like with basically zero acknowledgement of anything that Starmer had said. And Starmer came back and with this line of something like, "Oh, she says that she hates all these scripted answers in PMQs, and yet she can't deviate away from her scripted questions." And genuinely, not only was it the worst exchange I've seen Kemi Badenoch have, it's probably the worst performance of a leader of the opposition in PMQs that I feel that I've seen in quite a long time. I'm not going as far as to say it's the worst one that I've ever seen, but I can't easily recollect. There's not one that stands out in my mind. I can't easily recollect one that was worse. So anyway, the whole point that I was trying to make there, in a long roundabout way, is that, you know, Labour, if they end up having trouble and drama with Rachel Reeves and the Chancellor's got to be replaced, and Kemi Badenoch clearly is doing not a great job in opposition, not capitalising off the failures of Labour, it all seems to be a momentum going to reform at the moment. And as you move into these local elections, then that is going to be the mood music behind these votes. And of course, as we always say, you know, local elections, it's about bin collections and local issues and blah, blah, blah. But we know from history that the national mood and attitude towards our politicians of different parties does affect the way that people vote in local elections also. And it's going to be bad reading for both Labour and the Conservatives, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, granted, for my local ones, it seems to be going well, but I think it's because all the local councillors there locally are quite popular. But I think that's because if Labour does well in locals, it's in certain areas, it's because the local candidates are popular, not that the fact that Labour's doing well nationally.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there are always local differences and different considerations. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that local elections, the way that people vote, part of it is a local influence and part of it is a national influence, and it obviously varies by area as well. John, I'm going to look to wrap up the stream here because I've just clocked that I've been going for about an hour or so, which is it's a long time to be going on just one specific topic. But yeah, in conclusion to what I've said, then I think Rachel Reeves is in some deep shit, and I don't think that she's necessarily going to be able to dig herself out of this or ride it out. I think that there will be attention on her now from the media and from opposition politicians. If there hadn't already been, there certainly will be now.
I think she has until locals, basically. I think by locals she'll be gone. Kind of similar to her predecessor, Annie's Dobbs. I think she'll be gone by then.
Yeah, I think, you know, I maybe in the short term, I see her holding on if Starmer continues to stand with her and there aren't any new revelations that come out in the news. But my medium-term forecast is definitely Reeves will be gone. I would certainly be surprised if she rides all of this out and she's still Chancellor by the end of the year. I think we're looking at a time frame of probably in the next few months, to be honest.
I think she'll be gone. I think she'll be used as the scapegoat, like you said, and definitely when if reform do as well as we expect. So I think they're just like with the situation going on. Starmer, I think, will probably be, for all we know, he might already be looking into possibly, okay, who can I replace Rachel Reeves with? Let's see, because normally, and interesting, this is one last thing I forgot to mention, is that, sorry, there's a crying kid outside. Sorry, but
what are you doing to those children, John? Why are they crying?
Nothing. No, I think that's it. No, okay. But joking aside, but yeah, one of the biggest problems is usually the Chancellor sort of replaces the Prime Minister at some point. At least we've seen it with like Gordon Brown and Rishi Sunak. So it's like many people do see the Chancellor as sort of like the second in command, even if there's like a proper deputy Prime Minister, if you will. So he needs to think very carefully, and you can't keep and he needs to have someone that would hopefully stick around more for the long term and not be riddled with scandals. Otherwise, he's going to be back into square one.
Yeah, because you know, it's gonna don't get me wrong, it's gonna be a bad look for them having to drop Reeves anyway, especially so early on into their time in office. But my God, if you then later on have to work your way through another chancellor, then it really does look no different than the Tories in the last Parliament, where we were chopping and changing chancellors and prime ministers like nobody's business. All right then, John. I am going to wrap things up then. So I will say to the dear viewers, thank you very much for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the stream, do drop us a like. Mr. Cooper, you're now one of 3 eligible candidates for the Stream Guest of the Year Milky Award, along with Tom Williams and Cameron Hickman. So best of luck to you there.
Thank you, and I apologise for the background noise. See, as you know, I usually go outside. I hope that won't affect my chances, but still.
Points deducted. Points deducted. Cameron bought me some gifts on my birthday using a motivation card. What have you got?
A Twix bar.
All right then, John. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. I hope you have a nice weekend. I will see you again soon. Catch you all later on. Ta-ta.
Bye, everyone.